Hi everyone, good Thursday afternoon and welcome to the Rhode Island State House. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. We'd like to welcome on my guest today, Speaker of the House, Nicholas Mattiello. Thank you for joining us again.
Kate, always nice to be on with you.
Well, I appreciate your coming down. I know it's very busy this time of year, approaching the end of session potentially, but let's talk about a big piece of legislation GoLocal originally wrote on earlier this week when the Senate version was introduced. You introduced the House version. Now this pertains to a restructuring of the oversight and basically composition of the University of Rhode Island from coming out from underneath the Office of Post-Secondary Education and establishing a board of trustees to be more in line with other institutions around the region as well. Tell us a little bit how this came to be, the stakeholders that you talked with, and if you think it has potential to move this session.
Well, I certainly hope it moves this session, and yes, absolutely, I believe it has potential. We have to look at ways of being different and the same as other states and being competitive with other states. I am particularly proud of URI. My son went there several years back, so it doesn't affect me, but it's a university that I was proud to send my son to, and he got a great degree in engineering. It's a research university, it's our flagship university, and I want to make sure they're competitive. So I worked with the leadership at the university, and we came up with a bill that provides them with the flexibility and their local board of trustees that treats that flagship research university different than RIC and CCRI. They just are different, and they should be treated different, and they should be allowed to grow and flourish as an independent university that competes right now nationally and almost worldwide, and they do so very well. We should be very proud of them. They're a Rhode Island success story.
And you talk about, again, giving them the tools necessary to compete. Is it really about autonomy with a board of trustees? Now, again, would be appointed by the governor, but would be sort of an independent body, if you will, once appointed. Is that really the selling point of this piece of legislation in your mind?
Yes, it's a board that is going to concentrate entirely on our flagship, entirely on the needs of URI, entirely on the needs of a research university, and not necessarily looking for an integration between RIC and CCRI. And some people are concerned with that integration. I always believe you assist excellence and everything else will fall into place. And URI is excellent, their performance is top notch, and we want to give them the tools and the ability to continue to grow, continue to flourish, continue to compete with other universities so that they provide the education and the research that our citizens and our students desperately need.
Now here we are in June, the legislation just introduced. Do you anticipate this will go through a thorough vetting process, again, as we're here in potentially the last month of session?
Oh, absolutely. It'll go through a very thorough process. We'll have open public hearings, and if legitimate points of view are brought forward that gives us pause, we'll certainly consider that. It's not the most complicated issue. We're not, it's not a scientific study, so we'll let everybody be heard, and we'll make a judgment.
Do you have a sense, is there a sense of urgency that it get considered and voted on this session? Would there be potential to go into the 2020 session with this?
We'll see what happens. In my mind, there's a certain urgency. There is no need not to move forward in a manner that helps our flagship research university. If that's the direction we're going to move in, we should do it sooner than later. We should create the board, give them their autonomy, and help them grow and flourish.
Let's move on to, obviously, as you say, always the big focus in any assembly session is the budget. Now, we do expect it shortly. Can we get a little sense of what might be in and what might be out?
Well, we're still working. We're collaborating with the governor's office, with the Senate, and we're trying to make the numbers balanced. So at this point, it's not balanced, but it will be, and it'll be a good budget. What I can tell you that's out, and it's been previously reported, a lot of the new taxes. I've heard from a lot of businesses. I've heard from a lot of citizens, and they were looked on very or particularly negatively. So we listen to the public. We have an open public process. We work very collaboratively with everyone. We respect people and their opinion. And we've heard that the public does not like the new taxes, that they're onerous, bad for business, so they will not be in the budget. So most, if not almost all of the new taxes will not be in the budget.
Let's talk about something, the budget, again, always being a priority of yours, but the reduction and elimination of the car tax as well. Now, of course, we saw numbers from the recent revenue estimating conference that a small uptick, but when we talked with House Finance Chair, he says that the candy store is not open. Is there a potential impact in the schedule for the reduction to the elimination of the car tax? Could we see some alteration to that this year as you look at those budget numbers?
Here's the good news for every Rhode Island citizen. You will not see the car tax addressed in this budget, which means current law, 6-year phase out, 3 years left. We're going to stay on schedule and we're going to make sure it's funded. So the citizens of Rhode Island are going to get the tax relief that they desperately want and need. So
okay, so that's not something that's open for consideration or tinkering.
it will not be in the budget. If there's anything that you can rest assured about in this budget is there will be no car tax article or change.
Okay.
So since it's current law, it will not be addressed in the budget.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about something that was addressed just this week on the Senate side. Now, this pertains to the state's potential oversight of 195. What's your thoughts on this legislation, of course, on that Senate side? Does it have potential here to move forward to the governor's desk?
Yes, absolutely, it has potential. It's another issue that's coming to us a little late. I haven't read the legislation yet. We'll be working on it very diligently. It's important to the Senate. It's important to the Senate President. So it's important to me. And I believe it's important to the state of Rhode Island. We have to become more efficient. Our regulatory process is much too burdensome. New projects are delayed much too much. So I actually commend the Senate President for putting in this legislation, and we're going to give it a real good look. Where that takes us, I can't guarantee right now, but just like the URI legislation, I'd absolutely like to see it get done because it moves our state forward in a better direction much faster.
And what do you say to those folks that say this, usurps the authority as originally granted to the 195 Commission? Is it seeing that experience of seeing the progress or the lack thereof on 195 to date to say we need to revisit this and sort of, as you mentioned, streamline the process to make things move forward? We
should always be willing to look at processes that are not working as efficiently or as well as they should. So if something is not working right, just because we've done it that way, we set it up that way, we're not perfect, nobody is, no piece of legislation is. So if it's not working as well as it was designed to or it should, we should look at it again, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Now, we've spoken before, again, about the proposal in the governor's budget for the legalization of marijuana, sort of your hesitancy looking at it moving forward as well. Let's talk about both full-scale legalization and where things are on with the medical side. Are you still thinking that you are hesitant to say that marijuana will be legalized this year?
I'm probably, at this point, hesitant to say that. Never say never, but I know that I've been neutral on the issue this year and just listening and learning from other opinions. I know the Senate President's pretty negative on it, so I've never really given it a lot of serious consideration because one person being negative essentially kills the issue. But on the medical marijuana side, there's a lot of work that could be done, and what I've suggested is if you want to increase the number of compassion centers, we have to do so in a way that actually fixes the system and not makes it worse. It seems like we tinker with it every year and we create new problems every year. I hate to say, but that's exactly what happens. It's a very complicated issue. Most states have a hard time regulating it. So I want to make sure we get it right or as close to right as possible. And if we can do that in the next several days or a few weeks, I'm happy to look at increasing the number of compassion centers. Okay,
we're going to keep an eye on that. Of course, keeping an eye on the Senate side. Now, the Reproductive Health Care Act that was introduced in the Senate, going to committee, not getting out of committee, talk of a compromise. Does it lie strictly in the jurisdiction of the Senate side this year?
Yes, it's in the Senate. I don't know what's going on. You hear rumors now and then, and what I've learned is you can't listen to any rumors in this building. So we'll see what happens. I leave the Senate to their good judgment. What I have said is The House will once again go through the same exact democratic process we did the first time with the issue, and the House will consider it on the floor, and we'll see where that takes us.
Okay, so the next time that we talk, possibly seeing a budget introduced in the next few days?
You should see a budget next week sometime.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I was hoping to post for Tuesday. That's not going to happen, so hopefully Wednesday, no later than Thursday, we'll have a budget posted.
Okay, you heard it. Wednesday, no later than Thursday next week, the FY20 House budget will be posted. And House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for watching on GoLocal Live. Of course, catch us on Facebook and GoLocalProv.com. Throughout the evening, we'll be back in studio downtown for live tomorrow. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.
Thank you.
Thank you.